Hello everyone, this is Rajendra and in this particular video we are going to discuss about Python conditional statements and loops. Right, so this is something which is required for each and every programming language. So what advantage that we get it with a conditional statement or loops, right? So if you initially talk about the conditional statements, so in Python we have if condition, okay, or we can have if else, right? We can have if else multiple times as well, and then we can have a loop statement like for and while, right? So let's understand what is the need of all this, right? What is the need of all these statements? So let's start with a if. So basically what is the use of if statement? So we know that if we write just a number of statements, they will execute one by one. Their execution will happen one by one. But now let's say if we want to decide execution of a particular statement on the basis of certain conditions, we only want to execute that statement if certain condition occurs, right? So that is where this if condition would be very helpful, right? So for example, you want to do the division of two numbers, right? But now before doing the division of two numbers, you want to check the denominator value, and if it is a zero, you don't want to do the division. Instead of that, you want to give some message, right? So how you can use the if condition here? So first of all, let's understand how we write the if condition in Python, right? So let's say we have two variables. Let's say a is equal to 10 and we have another variable having value, let's say 2, right? So what you want to do here is you want to check what is the value of b. If it is not equal to 0, then only you want to do the division, right? So how you can write in Python, we have a if keyword to write the if statement. So what I can do is if b not equal to 0, b not equal to 0, then only what we can do is we want to do we just wanted to print the division like a divided by b, right? So basically this is a if condition, and then we used colon. So now let's understand this first. Okay, this is something we call it as a Python indentation. What we call it as a Python indentation. What does that mean? So basically in any other programming language, what happens is if you want to write any block of statement, we use some curly brackets, something like this curly bracket we use, that represents what all statements are part of that particular block, right? So in Python we don't have any such bracket. In fact, we don't use that to represent the block, right? Instead, if you want to represent the block in Python, if you want to start a block, we use a colon, and then whatever statements you want to add under that particular block, okay, we give some indentation, and under that indentation we just write any number of statements like this, right? Once you are done with the block, you just go back to the original position where you started the if, and you can start writing the print statement, right? Now what will happen if this particular condition is true? Then only these three statements will be executed, otherwise will directly continue execution from here, right? So to represent this block, what we have done is we started a block with colon, and then we have given some indentation. That could be a 1 space, 2 space, 3 space, 4 space, in fact any number of spaces. But we have to make sure that whatever spaces we are giving it for the first statement in that block, for all other statements should be starting with that same space, okay, or same indentation we call it as, right? So this is how you will the Python will understand what all statement are part of this particular block, right? So let's come back to our if condition understanding. So if you want to execute certain statement on the basis of some condition, that is where you can use this if loop, right? So here what will happen, it will check if b not equal to 0. Okay, if that is a case, then only it will go ahead and just it will print the a divided by the b, whatever the output. So now if I just run it, you can see 10 divided by 2, we got the output as a 5.0, right? But now let's say I give the value as a 0. Now what will happen, 0 not equal to 0, condition false, so it will simply come out and it will print the out. So if I run it, you can see we got this out, right? So that means this particular statement not executed if the if condition is not true, right? So this is how you write the if condition in Python, right? Now let's talk about other example where we'll use if else condition, right? So if you want to, if your condition is not true, if the if condition is not true, then only if you want to execute certain condition, that is where you want to do if else block, right? So for example, you want to do if b not equal to 0, then you want to just do the division, something like a divided b. Otherwise, else, under else you want to write another print statement where you will say that denominator is 0. This is how you want to put the message, right? So this way you can add a if else condition, right? So now if you want to do means if you want to execute statements, okay, only if certain condition gets a certain condition matched, okay, and if there are such multiple conditions, in that case you can use if else kind of a statement. So how you can do, let's say you have some numbers like b is equal to 10, a is equal to 10, b is equal to 20, and c is equal to 30, right? Now if you want to say like if a less than b, okay, if that is the case, you want to just say print high, okay, this kind of a statement you want to execute. Else if, okay, how we write else if, we have a elif keyword, okay, if the first condition is not true, then it will go and check the second condition, like if b is less than c, then you want to just print hello, right? And if this is also not true, then if you want to execute something, then you can use the else statement. So something like this, hey, something like this you want, right? So now if we execute, what output we got is high. Why we got this? Because a less than b, this condition is true, it will simply go and execute this, okay, it will simply ignore this two condition, because any of these three condition, only one condition will get execute at one point of time, right? So let's say if I make a is equal to 100, so 100 less than 20, this condition is false, so it will go in this particular section. Now b is less than c, this condition is true, so we should get hello as the output, we got it, right? So similarly, if I just add if 20 less than, instead of a 20, I'll just make it as a 40. So now if we run it, you can see we got the output as a hey. Why so? Because 100 less than 40 condition false, then 40 less than 30 condition false, and that's the reason it is coming into the else part and getting executed, right? So this is how your if else part will execute, right? Now let's see the next loop now, okay, these are the some conditional statement we call it as, okay, if else and if else if, right? So these are some, we call it as a conditional statements. So now let's talk about the looping. Let's talk about the looping. So basically in Python, for looping we have two loops, something we call it as a for and while loop, right? So what is the use of this particular two loops? So basically, if you have certain number of statements which you want to execute a certain number of time, right? So that means let's say you have 4 statements, and those 4 statements you want to execute 10 times, right? So that is where we can use the looping, right? Because if you don't have a looping, and if you want to do some functionality or execute some functionality 10 times, that same code you need to write 10 times, right? Because the execution is sequential. But if you want to reuse the code, that is where looping will helpful, right? So with the help of looping, what we can do is we can execute certain number of statements certain number of times, right? So for example, let's first see the while loop. So if you want to, let's say, print value of I from, let's say, 0 to 9 or 0 to 10, how you can do? We can initialize the value of I equal to 0, and then we can do while your I is less than 10, right? And then this is a block, so we can simply do print I, and then we can just increase the value of I. Okay, I is equal to I plus 1. So if we just run this, you can see we got the value from 0 to 9. So how it getting executed? I is equal to 0. So 0 less than 10, condition true. So it will print 0. Then we are incrementing the value of I from 0 plus 1, that is 1. It will go back again. Now 1 is less than 10, condition true, print 1. Then 1 plus 1, 2. 2 less than 10, print 2. Then 2 plus 1, 3. 3 less than 10. So this way it will go till 9. 9 plus 1, 10. 10 less than 10, condition false, and it will come out of that loop. Okay, so this is how your while loop will get executed, right? So I hope everyone understood this while loop. Now let's see the next loop, that is for, right? So this is again very much similar to your while loop. Only difference you will find here is, you can see in the while loop, the initialization part, the condition check part, and the increment part, all these 3 statements we have to do on a separate line, right? But in a for loop, we can do all this stuff in a single line itself. Okay, so how this for loop works? So basically the for syntax is, for a variable in, then you need to provide some iterator. Okay, what is mean by iterator? Iterator is nothing but a kind of a it will have some sequence of elements, right? So now in some other video we have seen list. Okay, we discussed about tuple, set, dictionary. These are the iterators where we'll find the multiple elements, right? So now if you want to get the value of all those elements one by one, that is where you can use this for loop. Okay, or for example, in Python we have one method called range. Okay, so in this range method, what happens, this range method will give you one iterator object which will have the values from 0 to 9, right? So this for loop will take out one value from that iterator. So internally, how that iterator will look like, that iterator will look like one list which will have all the elements, something like this. Okay, something like this, all the elements will be there in that iterator. So this is a list which contains element from 0 to 9. So how the for loop works? So basically for loop will extract first element from that list or iterator. It will assign it to variable x, and then we have to just execute some statement. Okay, for now I'm just using the printing statement. Okay, it will just print that value of x. Once that is printed, it will go back, it will take next value, assign it to x, print it. It will take next value 2, assign it to variable x, print it. It will take next value 3, assign it to x, print it. So this way it will go till 9. Once that is done, our for loop will be exiting. So you can see here, this for loop also printing the value from 0 to 9. So this range function, the stop value is excluding. Okay, that's why that 10 is not included here. So now if you compare while loop and for loop, so you will see the difference that in the while loop, the initialization part, the condition part and the incremented part, all the three part we are doing it on a different line. But in a for loop, the value assignment, the condition check and the increment, everything is happening on a single line itself. Okay, so that's the reason this for loop is more preferred instead of while loop. But yes, there are some cases where we can use a while loop as well, right? So this is what we have discussed in this video. We have talked about the conditional statements and then looping statement. We have two more very important statements. We call them as a conditional statements only. Okay, something we call it as a break, and there is another statement called continue. So let's quickly understand what is the use of those statements. So basically, let's say you have one loop. Okay, let's say for x in range 10, right? So now in an earlier example we have seen that we are just simply printing the value of x and we are getting all these values, right? But now let's say as soon as you found any specific value, you just wanted to terminate this particular loop, or you want to exit out of this loop. How we can do that is where you can use a break statement, right? That is where you can use a break statement. So let me write here. Let's say as soon as we get the value of I is equal to x is equal to 5, we want to stop this loop. So how we can do that? If x equal to 5 break. What does that mean? As soon as value of x becomes 5, will simply come out of the for loop. Okay, so that means value from 0 to 4 only, 0 to 5 only printed, right? So if I run it, you can see 0 to 5 printed and we directly come out of loop, because as soon as we do x is equal to 5, we get the value of x is equal to 5, it will do break, and this break will exit out of the recent loop. Okay, it will directly exit out of the recent loop. So this is how you can use the break statement. Now let's talk about the continue. Let me write a similar for loop for x in range 10, and now what is when to use the continue statement. So basically continue statement we can use if, let's say, now we talked about the block of statements, right? So let's say in a for loop you have 10 statement, right? And for every iteration all those 10 statements are getting executed. Okay, so for example, let's say uh, print a, where you want to print x, then print b, where you want to print x again, and then let's say print c, you want to print x again, right? These are the three statements available in this particular loop. So if I just run it, let me make it a short loop. Let's say 5. So if you see, for all the values, a b c values are getting printed. Like for 0 abc is there, for 1 abc is there, for 2 abc is there, right? So this is how it is getting executed. But now let's say if a value of x is, let's say, 3, in that case, okay, in that case only you don't want to print a c, you don't want to execute this particular statement if the value of x is 3, right? So in that case what we can do is, if x equal to 3, continue. Now what does that mean? So as soon as the value of x is equal to 3, it will just skip the, when we have the continuous statement, it will just skip the current iteration. That means whatever is there after that, it will not be executed. It will simply go and it will take the next value, that is 4, right? So here you can see for 3 ABC is there, for 3 ABC is there, but now when we run this code, for 3 C will not be printed, right? So you can see here, if we run it, Now for a 3 value, A and B is there but C is not there. Why so? Because we checked this condition and we are saying if there is a x value is equal to 3, then just continue. That means skip the remaining part of the iteration and then start again, right? So this is how your continue statement will work, right? So we discussed about if else, if else if, then we talked about the two more statements like break and continue, and then we discussed about the looping, that is for loop and while loop. I hope everyone understood. Okay, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe this channel, and if you have any comment feedback, just write it in a comment. And if you have any specific topic understanding requirement, just put it in a comment. I'll make sure that you will get that video as soon as possible. Thanks everyone.